This is a very difficult video for me to make because my plan was to actually highlight a lot of teams going into Iceland and try to break down exactly how they play and inform you guys on basically what to expect in this tournament. Now, please understand, in no way am I trying to disrespect the region and how they play the game. It's just that in a technical analysis perspective, I really can't give you guys too much. This region's level is just actually too low, and there's just a lot of flaws that I see in their gameplay, and I really can't. It was really difficult for me to watch through their VODs. So I'm just gonna keep this video short and basically break down exactly why in literally the first 3 rounds, the bunch of flaws that I see and how maybe you could learn from this. So off the rip, I basically looked at the top 2 teams in Japan and how they faced off with each other. We have currently the #1 Japanese team, Crazy Raccoons, against the former #1 team, Absolute Jupiters. Now, prior to watching these VODs, I've heard a lot of hype around Absolute Jupiters and how they're the most amazing undefeated team in Japan, but that was back in 2020. From what I know, Japanese Valorant at the beginning of the scene were very good at using their abilities and were one of the first regions to really push Jet to their limit. Well, of course, just before the Korean Jet montage was out at least. A lot of pros last year did study a little bit of the Japanese region, and they definitely did learn some new stuff, including Sentinel Shazam, where he did mention in one of the streams that he learned a little bit of stuff from the Japanese region when he was VOD reviewing them. So that's why I had pretty high expectations for this region. Regardless, let's take a look at this game. So first of all, let's start with their team comps. They're both running double duelists, but the only biggest difference is that Absolute Jupiter is running Sage and Crazy Raccoons is running Killjoy, which is more standard on this map. So since Crazy Raccoons is a team that's going to Iceland, I definitely did take this opportunity to look at their offense. So in terms of the beginning stages of the round, the way they scaled the map and used utility is very standard. On this B split that they have planned, they have Omen and Killjoy slowly working up main while the rest of the team actually works through mid. They use Sova drone to clear out anything close so the duelists would have the safest and highest chance of winning that fight. As the 2 duelists make it to market safely, this actually converts this round into the execution stage of it. So for this explosive execute, 2 things happen. First, the Omen and Sova arrow come out at the same time, which allows then the market and B main players to come out at the same time too. Crazy Raccoons have the duelists pad down the stairs while the rest of the B main players go through lane. What countered this strategy was Absolute Jupiter's wall in the lane side. Since this is pistol round, it's very difficult to break this wall really quickly, so the duelists were basically fighting on their own, then they both die. Not a big deal, it's something that Absolute Jupiter just basically hard countered them on. But here's where I have a big problem with their gameplay. This should be a huge advantage for Absolute Jupiter considering it's a 5v3, but how did Absolute Jupiter's Omen die? If you look at the minimap here, prior to Crazy Raccoon's execution, the Omen was actually sitting in CT smoke waiting for the right time to come out and fight with his team. He does do that and actually gets a kill on Raze, but right after he gets traded by Sova. Now a big red flag here I see is that the Sova killed him from B main. It's whatever, but on the utility tab right here, I do see that Omen has a smoke left that could have been used at B main. His death could have been avoided and the advantage for Absolute Jupiters definitely could have been maintained. So that's the first mistake I saw within that round. Alright, so moving on, rather unfortunately, the Raze utility does get Phoenix and this makes it a 3v3. Crazy Raccoons then slow down because they understand that there's 2 players on site, so it's very difficult to just rush into site, especially since there's a Sage wall blocking them, and they've never seen the Raze yet, so her position could be anywhere right now. But this is where the second red flag comes. Absolute Jupiter actually decides to leave site and fight with the Raze that's coming out of CT. Now here's why I don't think this is a good play. So for a fact, the most winning play is that Absolute Jupiter stays on site and the Raze just basically sits at CT and waits for either 1, Crazy Raccoons rotate off and go A, or 2, they decide to actually commit to the B fight and go on site to try to plant. Both options being advantageous for Absolute Jupiter for the positions they're in right now. If Crazy Raccoons were to push down to B, the Raze just goes on site and fights with his team. If Crazy Raccoons decide to actually rotate off as a team and go A, Absolute Jupiter would have Recon Arrow as an advantage for the retake, and Raze would make it on site faster than Crazy Raccoons would for early information. Now, resuming the fight, the Raze does get the first kill in this skirmish, but what happened after was very poorly communicated. After getting the first kill with 8 bullets in his frenzy, the Raze decides to fall back into CT, while simultaneously the Sage swings out and exposes herself to multiple targets. Essentially, during the fight with Killjoy, nobody could actually trade the Sage because 1, Raze is reloading in CT, and 2, Sova has a shock dart out, not his gun. After completely missing the trade window, Raze then decides to dry swing out of the smoke, takes a disadvantageous fight, and loses. Again, Sova couldn't trade him because this time he had his recon arrow out instead of his gun. Crazy Raccoons then decide to take the bomb and rotate to A for a free plant, leaving the Omen stuck in logs. Now here's the last red flag I noticed in this round. The Omen's thought process right now is, how can I help my Killjoy get this plant off and guarantee her an absolute position to win this round with her turret? The only option he really had was to actually stay in logs and force the Sova to push him, so he actually stalls time for the Killjoy to be able to get the plant off. And instead of doing all that, he just ends up swinging out and getting himself killed. Killjoy actually didn't even get his plant off because the Sova rotated so fast. But luckily he did get the kill off since Sova was also 1 HP. Alright, finally that's the end of the first round. Let's take a look at the second one where Absolute Jupiter is on eco. They start with a smoke in the B entrance and they push aggressively into the smoke and hold inside of it. This is actually a good play considering they're playing around their win condition of getting a close range right click off. Now where it doesn't make sense is when they hear the Killjoy backing up to spawn and at the same time they hear another player, which is the Jet, backing up from market to spawn with the Killjoy. At this point this play would be good if they were just looking for the Killjoy kill, thinking maybe it's just one person because she's the lurk. But when it's a 2v2 in long range combat with a gun disadvantage, it just doesn't make sense to take this fight. And of course they lose this, and at the same time on the other side of the map, the Raze, who was by herself on A site, just dies. Nobody around to trade her or even get one off of her death. They didn't use utility or anything. So moving on to the third round, this is a buy round for Absolute Jupiter, which gives them a very good chance of winning it. Since Crazy Raccoon's Killjoy actually has ultimate this round, it's fine to stack B at the beginning of the round considering they maybe want to fight early in B main and try to get some kills before the Killjoy all goes down. But Crazy Raccoons actually decides to go A and do a less effective ultimate there, and here's the reason why. It doesn't cover a large area of heaven, which allows Absolute Jupiter to play retake very easily right after the ultimate dies. So a fast retake would definitely be the best option for Absolute Jupiter right now, considering they do also have a Phoenix, and they at the time had Sova Drone, Sova Recon, and Raze Nades. They had all the utility to dump and just play retake with their gun advantage as well. It would have been very unlikely for Crazy Raccoons to even get a plant off and get into these good post plant positions that give their close range guns an advantage. Instead, the Phoenix on Absolute Jupiter midway into the rotate decide to actually push down and clear the flank and also greedily take the B orb. On top of that, he actually decides to flank all the way from the enemy's spawn to make it back onto A site as a flanker. This took so much time that they actually ended up losing the round because the players from heaven were just waiting for that flank to happen before going on site. Even though the Phoenix gets a 3k, he completely loses the round for his team because of the decision he made. Alright, and this is where I end off this analysis. If you guys learned something from this, please like, comment, and subscribe. Again, please don't take this video as me being disrespectful towards their region and whatnot. I respect every professional esports player equally. It takes a lot of hard work to become an esports player, so I hope you guys don't get the wrong idea. But anyways, peace out guys.